All right, we're going live. Hopefully you saw my announcement yesterday that we had to move our lives to today at 5 p.m. And we're going to have Christine Lazar, who's an incredible journalist and consumer reporter for KCAL 9 and for CBS 2 News here in LA. And I'm really excited that she gets to be our guest today. So say hello, let me know that you're here, and hopefully we can have a really awesome interview session. My glasses are a little fogged, but that's okay. We can figure it out. Also, I hadn't announced yet, I did on our last interview that I've been coming up with a name for this interview series. Hi, Christine. And we're going to call it HumanKindess, because I feel like all of us humankind, we need to come together during this time, and we also need to show each other kindness and compassion. Hello, Mohammed Salah. Thanks for joining us. Oh, Christine is here. Okay, we're going to join her on this interview. Here we go. I'm going to send a request right now. And hopefully enough people tune in live. If not, you can catch this later on IGTV, because now they've allowed us to put it on the channel. Hey!
Hi.
Oh, I'm so excited. Look at you in your backyard.
I know. Well, my kids are swimming right now, so I figured I would come out here and watch them while they swam and talk to you. Actually, one of them is going to join me.
Hey! Oh my gosh, look how big you've gotten.
I know.
I can't believe that already. I remember when you were in your mommy's tummy.
Yes, that's when we met. Okay, you guys, let me talk now. Yes, when we girls. Oh, hold on. Did you lose me?
Hold on. You're cutting out a little bit. There you are.
Okay, I'm coming back. I'm coming inside. I don't always have great service outside.
I was so close to doing this from the car today. Like, you have no idea. So I'm really glad that you're doing this from your backyard.
I can still see them. I mean, they're all good swimmers, so I don't have to like watch them like a hawk. But obviously, I like to keep my eye on them.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad though. And I was literally just playing poker with my kids. That's what I was doing. And I went all in right before I left, because I was like, hey, I have nothing to lose now. And then I won. So I was like, man.
There you go. See? Well, I say that the one wonderful thing that's come out of this quarantine is I feel like games and activities that we just didn't do before because we didn't have time, or we didn't think of it, or we packed our weekend with go, go, go.
Yes.
I was talking to my husband. I said, okay, the one thing I want to hold on to from quarantine once we transition into a more normal way of life is having at least one weekend day where we have nothing planned.
Yes. Yes.
And then I said, okay, what do you want to hold on to? Thinking it would be something like, oh, riding bikes with you and the kids or whatever. And he goes,
what did he say?
I really enjoy working out every day.
Hey, you know what? It's true. And when all of a sudden you realize you have time for things that you've wanted to have time for so long, it's nice. It is nice.
It is. The slower way of life is nice. I mean, there are things I miss. I really miss sitting in outdoor cafes and having like Sunday brunch. I really miss movie theaters. Okay, hold on. I miss movie theaters a lot.
Me too. And regular, live theater is one of my favorite things in the world, and I've missed it so much since everything closed.
Yeah, I feel very lucky because I was in New York from late February to like the first week of March, right before everything went off the rails. And we saw Hamilton, my best girlfriend and I, on Broadway. And we almost didn't see Hamilton. We almost saw something else because the tickets were kind of pricey. And I was like, if I'm going to see it, we're going to have really good seats. So it was, a good amount of money, as you know, Hamilton tickets are.
But now you realize how thankful you are that you spent the money and did it.
She and I, every time we talk, at some point in the conversation, we'll say, how about the fact that we were in New York right before? I mean, we got out of there. We're lucky we didn't get sick because I flew home on the 3rd or 4th of March. And, it was just as we started kind of being aware of the virus. But I never thought, I remember them saying they're going to close schools for 2 weeks. I'm like, they're never going to do that. And how can I handle 2 weeks? Now it's like 2 weeks.
It's been
like a walk in the park.
I know.
Yeah, actually, I just looked. We just did our 10th week.
Oh, yeah, that's right. right. 10. Oh my
Yeah, we
God.
just did our 10th. And we have 3 more weeks of school, although I think the last week will be just, more fun than anything
Yeah,
else.
we have 2 more weeks. We get out on June 5th. So yeah,
How's it going for you?
It's been a tough transition for sure. I think for me, I was kind of in a position where I was just getting to the point where I was finding balance in my life a little bit after losing my daughter. And I had put a lot of things in place to find that balance. And a lot of that was stuff that was on my own while kids were at school. And so when everything got canceled, all of those things I put in place got canceled. My therapies, my writing class, hiking by myself with the dogs, things that I was finding were really pivotal to my healing and my grief. And so it was a really big transition when everything shut down. And it felt so similar and so familiar to what life with cancer was like and how everything changed the minute Hazel got diagnosed. And it set a lot of triggers off for sure. I think now that we're in week 10, I'm feeling a little more sure of myself and of the routine, but it's still been a challenge. And homeschooling 4 kids has been very interesting because I have somebody in middle school who has 7 different teachers. And then I have a 5th grader who has 3 teachers, and then a 1st grader and a kindergartner, and they're all on different platforms. They're all requiring different things and having to trust the older 2 to kind of do what they need to do, but also trying to help them. It's been a lot, but I'm trying to focus on the fact that I have a house, I have running water, I have healthcare, I have all the things that I need to support me through this time. But it's certainly been a tough transition.
And I see your friend Christine says they're going to go to the end of June. Ugh.
I just saw that. I'm like so ready for it to be done tomorrow. I can't imagine going a whole other month. So I bless those families who have to stick it out. Oh, thank you. Someone just said our eyes are beautiful. I don't know who he's talking to. He's talking to.
We'll say both of us. Thank you.
I'll say both of us.
I actually have had the hardest time with my kindergartners. My son, who's in 4th grade, and I don't know if you've experienced this as well. When they're older, they, he can work a computer on his own. He can do Google Classroom on his own. He has an understanding of why you need to complete work, whether you're at school or at home. And he wants to please and he wants to get it done. My girls, one is better than the other, my twins, who are 6 in kindergarten. One of my twins will take 3 hours to do one worksheet. Yeah. She just does not want to do it. And the funny thing is, she's actually my highest achiever. So it's not that it's hard for her. She just refuses.
Different. Yeah.
Yeah. She just refuses to view this as a school. That's just not within her.
Well, I mean, pool in the backyard. How can you think that that's a school?
But, she gives me a really hard time. And my one, and maybe you have some insight to this, having, some older children and more kids than I do, my gut will say to me, you know what, it's not worth it. Let's just step away from it. But then I look at her and she's very smart. And I'm like, is she going to think that throwing a fit every time I present her with any sort of schoolwork or housework or whatever is going to get me to say, oh, this is too much for you. We'll table it. So I'm trying to walk that fine line between not giving them the pants in this house and also, having them be mentally okay.
Yes. Compassion. Yeah. It's been a fine line. There's been days where I've just been like, yeah, we're not going to do those 4 worksheets. We're just going to be done for the day. But I think it is true. We are in a position where we have been given this opportunity and this gift to raise these children. And part of that is making those tough choices and saying, yes, I know you don't like this. And yes, I know this is hard and it's hard for me too. But this ultimately will be better for you if you keep working, if you push through. Because I think right now the key is teaching our children how to cope with crisis. And part of that is moving forward in the things that are still normal. And that's something we learned when Hazel was diagnosed, is life outside of the hospital, outside of cancer, still went on. And we had to learn how to teach the kids, how to teach ourselves, how to function still in crisis. And that's what I've been trying to do, but it's hard and exhausting. It's exhausting.
Now,
I'm tired all the time.
When Hazel was in the hospital, did you keep school something you already know, the ropes a little bit?
Right. Well, okay. Well, when Hazel first got sick, she was only 2, so she wasn't school aged yet. When she was sick the second time, yeah, we had to learn how to keep her education on track. And it was a challenge. And there were times we had to just let it go and say, you know what, she's alive. That's all that matters. So in some ways, yes, but I've never had to homeschool for a whole day with 4 different children with 4 different needs. Like it's been a lot more challenging, I think, this go around. But I'm also not so concerned about germs as much because I don't have an immunocompromised child in my home anymore. And my heart goes out to all the families because cancer hasn't stopped. All the people that are still fighting other diseases haven't stopped in the midst of all of it. So, in some ways, I know I have it a lot easier than I would have had if Hazel was still in treatment. So, it's all about perspective, I think. And it's really hard to keep perspective, especially when the day is dragging on and you don't know what day it is and you're tired and you're frustrated and all of those things. But I think I try to lay my head down every day and focus on gratitude. I know a lot of people, they have a gratitude journal and they write down 3 things that they're thankful for every day, and it helps them. I haven't gotten to that point yet. I don't have enough mental clarity to do it, but I see the value. I see that gratitude really is the source of joy and the source of managing stress and coping with crisis. And I'm trying to do it, but I am not succeeding yet. But it's all about the path to get there.
Yeah, and I try to remind myself because I feel like we are constantly told, like, you should be grateful, you're healthy, you should be grateful, your kids are happy, you should be grateful this, grateful that, grateful they're not older. And sometimes it feels overwhelming because if you're not grateful and you're just having a bad day, you feel like guilty that you're having a bad day.
Yes.
So
I think acknowledging both sides of it is so important, is going, it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay that, yes, even though I have privilege of having the home that I do, having the running water, I have healthy children, I do have that privilege, it's still hard nonetheless. And it's just hard for me in a different way than it's hard for somebody else. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that it's hard for everybody. And just, and I think that's something I learned a lot during Hazel's treatment is my child had cancer and it was awful, but there were other kids whose children had cancer 4 different times, or children who had cancer and Down syndrome, or, all of these different things. And it made me reflect on how lucky we were, but it didn't take away from how hard it still was. And I think that as humans, and I was just telling whoever was watching, I don't know if anyone was watching, but I was just telling them, I want to name this series HumanKindess, because I think as humankind, we need to have more kindness and compassion, even for those we hate, even for those we don't understand, because everybody has something that they're dealing with. Even the worst of us, can use a little compassion. So I think that for me, this interview series is about meeting people where they're at and understanding that no matter their circumstances, they're going to have struggle, and how are they coping with that, and how can we help, And that's why I was excited to have you on, because you're going to offer a different perspective than a lot of people being a journalist during a time like this. So can you tell us a little bit about what that's been like for you? Because before you were doing a lot of consumer reporting and making sure people were being treated fairly in the business world. But what has it been like now since the COVID-19 outbreak?
Well, our work, like everybody's, has been really, flipped on its head. We had 400 people in our building before COVID, and now we're down to 25 people working in the building.
Wow.
So we really, I will say, to CBS's credit, they started early. We were essentially safer at home before we were told to be safer at home. We had about a week's head start. And a lot of that came from the fact that we had a COVID outbreak. Thank you. My husband's bringing me my iced tea. We had a COVID outbreak at CBS in New York. And because New York was ahead of Los Angeles, as we all know. And when that happened, they had to shut down their building. And we actually did their newscasts for them, which I think has never been done in the history of CBS, where you have a different city doing the newscasts for another city. So we were reading their news. They were writing it and producing it. And our anchors were reading stories about New York, which was really strange. So I think our bosses here in Los Angeles saw what happened to them, saw how much it, threw everything off and said, we're going to get ahead of this because we are seeing what's happening in New York. So we did that. And they said almost immediately that field reporters would not be coming into the building anymore. We were one of the first groups that were basically told very nicely, don't come in.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know what that was going to look like for us. For me, I've been very lucky, and I'm so grateful that I have a boss who is very understanding of my unique situation, which is I have 3 elementary age kids.
Yes.
And all 3 of them are not old enough or capable of being on their own. I don't have high schoolers or even middle schoolers who could be alone for a couple hours. I have 6-year-old twins and a 9-year-old boy. And so they're all in school, so they still have a lot of schoolwork, but they're all too young to really do anything on their own. So I have not, short of maybe going out a couple times for interviews, I've done everything from my living room where I'm sitting right now. I have a photographer who comes here every day, and he's wonderful. His name's Ari, and I am grateful to his family and his wife for holding down the fort so he can come to me. And I do most of my interviews via Zoom. And I ask people, like, for instance, if I was going to interview you, I would do the interview on Zoom. I'd record it. And I'd say, do you have anybody else in your house right now? And people always kind of look at me weird, like, why are you asking? Like, are you want to rob my house? Why are you asking me that? And I say, can someone get a cell phone and get some video of you in front of your computer or making dinner or whatever I need to use as what we call B-roll, which is the video in a story for the piece. Because normally I would go into your house and I would get that video myself. But it's not safe now for me to go into a bunch of different houses every day, both for me and for the people who live in those homes. So things definitely look a little different. They're not as professional looking from my journalistic eye, but people at home, I don't think say, I think Lauren's middle schooler shot that video of her. They don't know that. And then
too, given the circumstances, I think people are understanding it's not going to be perfect all the time, but I think it's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, it's organized chaos. It's, a beautiful mess. And I'm still doing very consumer-esque stories. I'm really not, in the beginning, I would say this is kind of the first week that I've even looked at non-coronavirus related stories. But there are a lot of consumer coronavirus related stories, like people who can't get their money back for travel, people who were ripped off by people selling, price gouging PPE gear, how to manage. The big one we've been doing is how to manage unemployment. How do you get through to EDD? How do you get your unemployment? What aid is out there for you if you're a 1099 employee? What aid is out there for you if you are struggling as a small business owner? So we've done lots of stories on PPP loans, and I'm learning as we're all learning, and I'm talking to the experts, and I'm spending a day researching and then breaking it all down for people. So I really feel like the news we've been doing has been what I like to call news you can use. I feel like people can walk away from my stories and say, okay, now I know how to get my unemployment dollars. Now I know how to, one thing that was interesting is when no one was getting PPP loans, remember, like all these small businesses could not get loans. People were frustrated because Ruth's Chris and the Lakers were getting this money.
Yes.
And I interviewed this restaurateur from downtown LA, and he said, look, I was with, I think it was a B of A or something. He said, I saw how long their list was of people who needed loans. And I was, a small fish in a big pond. So he did some research, and he found a bank in North Carolina that only does SBA loans, which are small business administration loans. And they had a very small clientele because they were a small, I think, single branch bank. And he was able to get his loan because he just thought outside the box. And then I was able to tell people about that. And I know some people watched the story and went to them for round 2.
Wow.
So it's been really nice to, find things that can actually help people, because I think so many people feel very helpless in this environment.
Yes. And I have a friend, and I've quoted her so many times. She's wrote a book called Chase Away Cancer. And she wrote in that book, when you feel helpless, you feel hopeless. And I think that that is so true, that when you don't know what's coming, when you don't know how to help yourself, it's so hard to pull yourself through. And I love that you're doing stories like that, because I think it's so easy with a lot of journalism and a lot of news media to choose the most sensational stories. I love that that's something you're passionate about and that you want to help people. And I think your network is behind you. And I think that that's really great. And
yeah,
I know,
and we've also, I will say, and I just want to, pat my employers back a little bit. I don't think anybody's watching, so it's not for a raise or that. But we also have set out every day on our morning call. We do a 9 a.m. Zoom call, and we say, okay, let's talk about the recovery stories. We don't just want to profile the people who've died, which they are very important to profile, because you need to put a face to the numbers. I read an article on the LA Times, and it was saying, if people realize that it's like, I don't remember how many, but it's like so many planes going down in a day is equivalent to how many people we're losing from the coronavirus. And if we were watching the news and it was like 10 planes went down one day, we would be horrified. But because we're not seeing the caskets, because we're not seeing the dead, it's easy to kind of make it a statistic and not the reality. So we have wanted to put a face to the loss, but we also want to put a face to the recovery, because we know a lot of people will recover from this. We know that the recovery rates are good, which is, thank goodness that that's the case. So we have also been trying to cover the positive that's come out of this, whether it be someone doing good, like people raising money for PPE for the hospitals, or it's been, a guy who was really, really sick and on a ventilator, and he got out of the hospital and he's doing great.
Yeah, I think that it's so easy for people, especially if they're not in your profession, to make claims about what the news media does. And I think on the whole, there are things that can be sensationalized, but it's really wonderful to hear from somebody like you to say, hey, look, we're doing the best we can, and we do want to share the stories, because we don't want to create an environment of fear only. We want to create an environment of hope. And I think it's really awesome to be able to hear that from somebody who's in the industry, because I think people can make a lot of claims, but they have no idea, because they've never worked in the news media. They've never been a journalist or had a friend who was a journalist. And that's partly why I wanted to have you on today, was to give a voice to those who are being criticized so much during this time. And knowing that you guys are all humans too, and you're just as scared and stressed as we are, but you're trying to give us the best information possible.
Yeah, and we have families, and we don't, I've been lucky. I have not been out at any of the protests, but I've had coworkers who have had people say really crappy stuff to them. And I've had coworkers be intentionally coughed on, things like that. I saw some video of a journalist who really kept his cool. I don't know that I could be as cool as he was. Not in our market, not in Los Angeles, where he was at a protest about an opening up protest, and he was being heckled for wearing a mask. And I always tell people, I say, look, sometimes I think you're confusing social media with media. A lot of the things that you're seeing on your Facebook feed are disguised as news, but they're not news. Look at the URL. Is it coming from CBS? Is it coming from NBC? Is it coming from, the newspaper you're like? And even Fox News, like if that's where you get your news from, make sure it's coming from there and not from these trolls and these bots who create things just to divide us.
I love that.
You really need to know your source. And I tell people, just Google it before you post it on Facebook. There was like a meme going around that was saying that no one at any of the grocery stores was getting sick, that no one at Walmart and no one at Kroger and nowhere. And it's like, no, simple Google search will show you that grocery stores are losing lives. I mean, it's not a huge number, but it is significant. And so just Google it before you post it. Make sure it's factual, because I would never want to contribute to the misinformation that will only divide our country more. And it's okay to not agree with things, and it's okay. If you don't agree with wearing a mask, that's fine. But don't criticize someone who does want to wear a mask. You know, you have to find that compassion and realize that we all have different levels. I saw a really great thing on Facebook. It says we're not all in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm.
Yes. Yes.
So we have different lives and outlooks, but we're all weathering the same trauma and the same crisis.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, that even the worst of us deserves some compassion and understanding, because we've all gotten to a place of whatever happened to us in our lives, whatever childhood traumas we've had, whatever damages we've had, whatever stressors we've had, and it creates in us these things that we don't even realize have happened, and we can have reactions to stress that we don't even know. And I think having understanding for each other and compassion and kindness is where it should all start, because what I'm seeing so much on social media, which I'm trying right now to not be on so much because it is so polarizing, but what I'm seeing so much is we have people on this side and we have people on this side, and they hate each other, and there's no middle ground, and there's no understanding, no compassion, no meeting each other where we're at. And I just hate that. And I love that what you are doing is trying to bridge that gap. And a lot of news stations, I think, are trying to do the same. I mean, I know you guys work really hard at making sure that what you report is reputable and is not unfounded stories.
Right. And I tell people too, you know, we would get sued big time if we're not going to put something out there that, that is inaccurate. We're not going to put something out there that, you know, we think is going to get us clicks or views that's not true, because CBS has deep pockets, and there are plenty of lawyers who would say, hey, we're going to sue you over that. So, you know, even some of our stories that are more controversial, like reporting on maybe a business or, you know, something having to do with legal claims against someone, we have attorneys who look things over. I mean, we're not just like willy-nilly throwing it out into the universe to see, you know, we don't report on rumors, put it that way.
Yes. And I think social media, it's just so easy to disseminate information, and it's so easy to just share something and you haven't done your research, or the person who created it, you know, or you don't know, hasn't done their research and just did it for clickbait, and you're pressing share, 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 share. And then it gets out there in the world and people believe it is truth. And it's a lot harder to really find out what's real. And I think, you know, I think it's very important to make sure you're finding your information on the most reputable sources necessary, and then make your opinion. And if you still have a different opinion than me, totally fine.
Right.
And we talk about it, but we don't have to hate each other and say you're an awful human being for believing that way. And I think we're seeing that so much nowadays because we're just so polarized. It makes me so sad. Really.
I know. And you know, the other thing is that a lot of things cannot be condensed down to something that fits on Facebook, right? For instance, a lot of people have been very nervous and upset and scared over these new CDC guidelines about what it will look like when we go back to school. Mm-hmm. And people took some of the bullet points and made graphics, you know, like a single slate graphic that's very shareable on Facebook. Mm-hmm. But if you actually read the 4 pages, very small type, so it takes a while, from mm-hmm. the CDC, it's much more reassuring. For instance, there was a graphic that said every child must wear a mask over the age of 2. But if you look at the CDC guidelines, it says masks are encouraged for children over the age of 2, especially older children who will be able to handle it. But if they can't, you know, we understand that. So if you see something like that and it's scary to you, look for the source and read it yourself. And it may take you longer than 30 seconds, but know that most things cannot be simplified to a single graphic or a single meme or whatever people are sharing. And I went and read all 4 pages of the CDC guidelines, and yes, it still is intimidating to me, but it's not as scary as some of the things that I've seen. You know, it says try to eat in the classroom versus eating in the cafeteria. Well, some schools might not have the ability to do that. You know, maybe their classrooms aren't made to, you know, allow children to sit and eat their lunches, but maybe some are. So, you know, I always encourage people, like, look for the actual source, not the one that people condense down. And in fact, that graphic that's shared so widely that I've seen like thousands and thousands of shares has guidelines spelled wrong. So I tell people too, if it's not spelled right,
It's probably not reputable.
Yeah, like come on.
Yeah, it's so hard. We were talking about, my husband and I were talking about, just before we even knew it, we all became so reliant on social media. And really, it just started as a business by some guys. And now we all rely so heavily on this in order to function in life. And we don't even see the repercussions yet because we're still in it. And I think as we're seeing this unfold, maybe we're waking up a little bit and going, okay, maybe this isn't the best place to get our news, and that we need to be more thorough, and we need to be more understanding with people. And there's the type of people, the trolls that you get, that are going to be behind their keyboards typing things to be inflammatory on purpose. And, but when it comes down to it, these were just businesses created, and we don't need them in order to survive this world. We can look to other sources, but I think we all feel so helpless because we've created this new way of life where if you don't have social media, you kind of feel like you're out of touch with reality. And that's
and I love it. I do love social media.
So do I.
I love catching up with friends. I love seeing what people are doing. I love keeping in touch with people who I can't see, whether they're on the other side of the country or just
really wonderful, beautiful things about it.
And I get great story ideas on
media. I mean, being able to do something like this, it's so incredible. And that's why I've never just decided, never again, I won't do it. But I think it's all about balance in life, because just like anything that brings good can also bring negative things. Like, think about alcohol, for example. There's really awesome things about it. It can help you relax at the end of the day. It can, help you take your filters down so you can actually have conversations if you're really stressed or whatever it is. It makes you have fun with your friends, but it also can lead to other things. And I think it's about trusting yourself that you need to find balance in your life. And social media is the same thing. It's enjoy it for what it is, but also know that there are unintended consequences and there are negative things about it. And you have to be aware of those things in order for you to function in it in a balanced way. But man, it's hard to do. It is so hard to do.
Yeah. And your friend Christine said on there, the other Christine, not me, Christine,
yes,
that it's hard, that sometimes it does replace face-to-face conversations. And I will say that sometimes I feel like, oh, I've been seeing my girlfriends. And then I'm like, well, actually I haven't seen her. I just know what her kids are doing and what she did for dinner the other night. So it is true that sometimes I think it takes away from the face-to-face interactions, but in quarantine, it's been wonderful.
Yes, I agree. And I think it's been the thing that has brought us all together. And all of these apps and all of these things have improved themselves even more to help each other during the time. And that's the stuff that I'm trying to focus on, is all of the things that we can find hope in, rather than all the things that we find fear in. And even this interview series is kind of what I've been wanting to do, is share individual stories about what it's been like for them in quarantine, and go, hey, everybody has a different struggle and we are all learning different things. And how can we learn from each other to move forward during crisis? Because that's where we are right now, is going, okay, well, we're not out of the crisis yet, but we can use tools to keep moving forward. So then we are better than we were yesterday when we are finally out of it.
Right. So how are you?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, someone said they love the memories that social media brings up too. And I love that part too.
But is that hard for you?
Sometimes, I was just going to say, sometimes it can be challenging, because I can look back on a memory that I no longer can make new ones with. And that is hard, but I also am so thankful. I think about this all the time. My grandmother, on my father's side, she lost a child to neuroblastoma in the 1970s. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of surprising.
Is there a genetic link to it?
We've tested, so far, no. Hazel had no hereditary form of neuroblastoma, but who knows? In 30 years' time, they might find some new marker, and we have some sort of deficiency or some sort of genetic mutation in my family that causes it. But we don't know now. What we know now, Hazel did not have the form that they know of. But I think back, like she has maybe a handful of photos of her son, Kevin, and he was 3 when he passed. I can get a memory that flashes up on Facebook anytime I want. I can listen to voice messages she's left me. I can watch videos and I can hear her voice anytime I want to. And as painful as those reminders can be sometimes, I think of the alternative, and the alternative would be I would have nothing. And God, I'm thankful. I am thankful. I can literally just press play and be with my daughter if I need to.
Right.
And it's hard. And sometimes I cry a heck of a lot, or a memory will pop up. Like just yesterday, a friend of ours, she shared a memory of her daughter ringing the bell after chemo was done. And it put me right back in that place with Hazel. We did it 3 different times. And it made me mad. It made me sad. It made me happy. It made me all these different feelings, because I went, God, like we got to hit that marker 3 times and she was so proud. And I got to be there in that moment with her. But then I got really mad because that means I don't get to do that again. And that even though she rang that bell, she still succumbed to the disease. And it makes me feel a lot of things. And I cried a lot yesterday when I saw it. But at the same time, like, I get to have that reminder in a way that previous generations never, ever had the chance to. So, you know, it's all about trying to shift perspective. And it's really, really hard to do when you're overcome with emotion. And I think that's the same with crisis. It's so hard to find perspective or to find truth. You're just overwhelmed with all the things you're feeling, you know? And I'm trying to give myself grace on the days where I'm feeling the things. I feel the things and I say, I'm not okay today, but that's okay to not be okay. And then on the days where I'm feeling a little more level-headed, I try to work with some of that.
Yeah. You know, hold on, I just thought I heard something. You know, my favorite memory of Hazel was when I came to your house. Do you remember when your Instagram account got
Yes.
taken down, or we ended up getting restored, right?
Yes, it did
Yeah.
in a way. Yes, it did.
Yeah. And so you and I were doing an interview downstairs, and you have that like play area that's up above.
Yeah, the loft.
And, yeah. And Hazel was dropping like this rope thing she had down from up above, and it would come down and we would hear it, and it would, you know, catch your eye. Obviously it was behind my head. And so you were, you know, kind of frustrated because you were trying to focus on the interview.
Yes.
And she just kept dropping it down. And then I think you finally told her, like, we will come up and play with you as soon as we are done, but you need to give us, you know, a couple more minutes to just talk uninterrupted. And so then we went upstairs, and then she loved playing with the microphone. She did like a little fake report or something to that. And it was just so cute. And at the time, I think my girls were only babies, so I really only had like 1 moving child in my house. And you had 4. I think Zoe was very little, maybe a baby or something.
Then,
and I just oh yeah, well, you had 5, 4 moving.
Yes,
I think Zoe was less mobile. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how does she do it? You know, like how is she not screaming at these children right now for dropping things down behind this interview? But you were so calm, and I was so impressed. And maybe you yelled after I left. I don't know.
Probably.
But it was really cute. It was just so Hazel, because you just could not contain that spirit in her.
Yeah.
You know,
something I say a lot about her is that no matter what you did, if you walked into a room with Hazel, you could not ignore her. Even if she wasn't trying to get your attention, she just did.
Yeah.
Because she was just this spirit that you needed to have in your life whenever you met her. It was just, yeah, I feel very lucky to have been her mom. And yes, there were days where even when she was in treatment, I would yell at her or whatever. And I struggle with those things all the time, but I'm also trying to give myself grace and understanding, going, okay, I'm human. And sometimes parents, we lose our cool, or sometimes we have to set boundaries because kids are still learning those things. Like telling her it wasn't the time for the parachute or rope or whatever was the right thing to do in that moment, you know, but it's hard. But yeah, she was something else. Christine said something really nice too down below. Another Christine.
Yeah.
That she loves how honest that we are in our feelings. And I that's something that I'm trying very, very hard to do, especially on social media, because it's so easy to put our best foot forward. it's so easy to show people the best sides of ourselves because you have to be really vulnerable to show the worst side of yourselves. And I'm still struggling with it. I mean, I still take 20 photos until I get the one I really like. And
I mean, who doesn't? I don't know.
know.
Like my husband, he'll just like take one, and I'm like, that cannot go on Facebook of me. Like, sorry, no, thank you.
It's freeing to start letting go of some of that stuff. I haven't gotten very far yet, but I'm trying. And part of that is just being really honest. And I think that started with Hazel's treatment. I did not want to shy away from how hard it was because I felt like that would have been a disservice to Hazel. Yeah. And I wanted people to know, like, yes, some days she's this adorable, cute, bald kid who's feeling great and playing with all of her siblings. But then there are other days where she feels really, really awful. And that, like you said earlier, about putting a face to the issue. And I think with Hazel and with childhood cancer, people don't realize how widespread it is. We lose about a classroom every single day to childhood cancer. And again, if it was like some sort of disaster or some sort of shooting where we were losing a classroom full of children every single day, we would all be up in arms. But because it's a widespread disease that doesn't go away, it's easy to get used to. And for me, I said, I don't want to get used to this reality. We need to change it. And I need to show you how hard it is and how hard it is as a parent, but also make sure that I'm still trying to choose joy, still trying to find hope. And Hazel was so good at doing that. She was so good at, despite her circumstances, finding the things that brought her passion in life, that brought her hope in life. And, you know, that's what I'm trying to do on social media, what I'm trying to do with writing my book, you know, with the podcast that I did. It's about, yes, life is hard. Life is full of suffering and crisis, but it's also full of beauty and joy. And we can look at both of those things and learn from them as long as we keep being honest with each other.
Right.
If we keep putting only the butterflies and rainbows out, people are going to see that and think their life should be that. And they're going to think that, you know, something's wrong with them or something's wrong with the life that they have. And I hate that happens.
And I have said, like, one of the things I've struggled with the most with the homeschooling or distance learning or remote learning or whatever you want to call it, is I'll see other moms will like post that day they did this amazing art project, or they cooked all day in the kitchen, or they've set up like a real classroom in their house, which is phenomenal. And I am not taking anything away from that because we all have different strengths, right? But A, I'm not creative. B, I hate mess. I hate it. So I'm not that mom who's going to be like, finger paint all through the house. I'll clean it up later. I can't do it. It sends me into a tailspin, and it makes me not a good person.
But if it works for them, awesome.
If it works for them, great. And then I'm still working full time, so I can't sit down all day and do schoolwork with my kids. And so or cook, or, you know, like we've done a lot of takeout and we've done a lot of frozen meals, and that's just what it is. And so I have to sometimes not look at those things. You know, in the beginning, a lot of people sent me, and it was well-meaning, but they sent me like, oh, sign up for this virtual this, or look at all these apps that your kids can use. And it was like,
it was so overwhelming.
I can't even get through their schoolwork, let alone navigate new apps. I can't do it.
And then you feel for not doing all of those things, because as moms, we tend to compare ourselves to each other. And I think, like you said, realizing I may not be that kind of mom, but I'm this kind of mom, and it comes with its other benefits. And yes, those kids are going to get the benefits from being a child of that mom, and that's amazing. But my kids are going to get the benefits of being my child and me being their mom. Right. But it's so easy to compare. It's so easy. I'm the same.
We all do it.
I felt so guilty in the beginning because I wasn't signing them up for, you know, piano lessons online and you know, virtual field trips and all these things. And because of social media, the fear of missing out, right, becomes very real, because you're going, oh, well, all these other kids are getting these things, but my kids aren't, and maybe I'm terrible. And I'm going, wait a second. My kids are getting a mom who loves them. They're getting they're getting a mom who is there and present. And in the case of you, they're getting a mom who's showing them the value of hard work and they're learning different things being in your family than they would in another family.
Right.
And we're all going to screw up our kids in some way.
I know. I looked at, my son, since he's turning 10 this summer, I'm like, he's now, sometimes I look at him and I'm like, okay, he's at the age now where he could remember this stuff and like talk about it in therapy in 20 years. And so I said to him the other night, I said, if you sat down with someone and said, what was the best thing about your mom and what was the worst thing about your mom, I want you to tell me.
Yeah.
And of course, he didn't even want to say anything bad about me because he's such a sweet soul. And I think you have a firstborn son. There's something about those firstborn sons. They want to like protect you and they're so sensitive.
Oh, wait till you turn 13. It changes a little bit.
Okay. Well, maybe it'll change. But still, but I would bet you would say, because I have talked to moms of older sons, I do believe there can be a very special connection between a mother and a firstborn son. Yeah. So anyway, but I said to him, I said, one day you may go to therapy because, therapy's good, whether you think you need it or not.
Everyone should be a therapist is what I think. But anyway.
Yeah. And I'm like, I want you to be able to go to the therapist. And obviously there are going to be things that I did that you didn't love. That's just natural. We're never going to love everything about our parents. But I said, I don't want you to go to your therapist and feel like I am the source of any of your pain or problems, And so I just in my mind, especially when I have a rough day, I can be a yeller. That's my thing I have to work on. When my tolerance is really high, so I take a lot, and then when I hit up here, I just snap. Same. And I just literally like smoke comes out of my ears, and I turn into just like this yelling crazy lady. And when it happens, I go to bed with so much guilt. I'm like, how could I have yelled like that? It really wasn't that big of a deal. But at the time, you just feel like you can't breathe. Yes. And we're human. And so I always make sure after I do that, even if it's not till the next morning, I apologize. And I say, that was not the right way to handle it. I'm sorry that I did that. I'm going to work on that. And I need you to work on whatever it was that sent me into a tailspin.
Yes. Yeah. That's something that I too have been trying to focus on, is going, okay, I can't be perfect for you. And I don't ever want you to think I'm perfect. I want you to know that and I'm going to make mistakes, but anytime I make a mistake, I will apologize to you because you are another human who deserves an apology. And I think I've asked that question of my oldest because he's 13 now, and it's a totally different relationship, and I love it. It's been really, really exciting. But it's different than the relationship you have with an elementary school kid who still wants to cuddle with you and tells you that you're the most beautiful woman in the world. My oldest doesn't shy away from telling me my flaws, but I'm okay with that because it's making our relationship better. Yeah. And he has said that I like to talk about things, like heavy conversations, and sometimes I do it too much where he just wants to unplug a little bit, and I'm like, let's dig into the root of that issue. Let's psychoanalyze everything. And he's like, Mom, you're going to psychoanalyze me straight to therapy.
Right.
I'm trying to find
so smart.
Yeah, he's a very kid. I think losing a sibling has really created a lot of wisdom in all of my kids because they have faced something that we don't generally face until we're much older, and so they've learned a lot. But I also know that they're still kids, and I'm trying to find that balance, But I agree. I think as long as we keep looking at each other like we're all human, we're all going to screw up, and as long as we're self-aware enough to acknowledge our flaws and say sorry, then we can move forward and be better. So,
and I do that with my husband too, because if we get in a fight in front of the kids, I hate that. I hate for them to see us fight, but especially being under the same roof for 10 weeks or whatever it's been. Yes. It's tough. I mean, my husband and I have been married for 12 years. You guys have been married, I know, for a long time.
It'll be 15 years next month. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I've known him since I was in my early 20s. In 2002, we met. So, it's not new anymore, put it that way. Yes. And when we fight, though, because we both have quick tempers, I always make sure that we apologize or at least show a sign of affection or a sign that we're okay in front of the kids.
Yeah, that's so important. And again, it's not hiding from them the realities of life, but
Right.
also acknowledging that you're going to make mistakes. So then when they start making mistakes, when they start screwing up, because everyone's inevitably bound to, that they know that it's okay and that they don't have to be perfect, and they can start to find their way in the world and apologize to people along the way, because apologies go so far. It goes so far.
It's they're great. I mean, I need to be better. I'm good at apologizing to my kids, but I know is like I'm very stubborn. I never want to admit that I'm wrong, so I have a harder time with like apologizing.
That about you.
Yeah, and usually it's like I'm sorry that you felt that I was doing that, you know. And my husband's like, okay, could you just say sorry?
Just
you know,
actually
like
say sorry. Yeah.
like an actual apology. But, you know, I say to my kids all the time when my husband and I fight, you know, I say, look, you guys fight with one another, but you still love
Yes.
each other. You know, you
Yes.
still want to be each other's sisters and brothers. I still want to be, you know, but I tell everybody all the time that when my husband and I leave and we're not around the kids, like if we get a weekend together, we never fight.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ever say my kids make me fight. It's not that. But
No,
the
but
stress that comes with
Mhm.
having a full house with 3 kids,
Yes.
that is what inevitably leads to fights.
Yes.
And so
we as humans forget how much of an impact stress has on us, not only mentally, but physically, emotionally, spiritually. Stress can just create a lot of things that we never even realized. And I think learning how to manage stress is probably the biggest, most important thing we can do as humans. And it's so hard, but you know, I'm not great at it. I'm trying really hard, but stress gets to me all the time, you know, but things like finding your passion in life helps balance stress. Finding time alone, taking a walk outside, exercising if you can. I'm not really good at exercising. Maybe I'll get there one day. I don't.
do you take walks? Like ever leave your
Yeah,
house and take walks
I
by
do love
yourself?
to walks. Yeah, and what I've been doing during this quarantine, because right now, again, I spent the best part of the last 2 years trying to heal from the major grief of losing a child. And it's been a lot of work. I've been in 3 different therapies. I've had major PTSD episodes. I ended up in the hospital one night with a major anxiety attack. Like, it was a lot. And it's still a lot. But what I've been learning is that balance is key, and that I need to give myself grace, and that as stress or crisis comes, like, know that it's going to set you back a little bit. Know that you're going to have feelings and emotions you don't understand, but be patient with yourself and make sure you find time to just be with yourself so you can sort through all the stuff that's going on in your life. And for me, I've been taking drives. So I'll get in the car and I'll drive for like 3-4 hours, and I'll I'll end up in places I've never been. But I've explored so much of Southern California during this quarantine, just seeing places I've never seen before, and it's actually been really exciting. And when I'm driving, my brain is working because I have to drive, but it creates then activity in the other part of my brain, which allows me to think through a lot of this stuff. Or I'll turn the music up really loud and I'll sing louder than I possibly can, because I can't do that when I have a house full of kids, because I'll embarrass the heck out of them.
My son will not let me ever sing. I'm like, I mean, I don't have a great voice, but like if I like even hum a tune out and about, he's like, oh, stop it, please stop it now, stop it. And I'm like, gosh, bud.
Kids, I talked about this with Aaron and the kids the other day. I was like, I can't help it. Anytime a good song comes on, I just kind of sing to it. And I thought about it and I was like, man, they must get annoyed, because they probably just want to listen to the song without my voice that is nowhere near as good as the singers, you know, alongside. So I'm starting to like learn how to control it. So I do it in the car, sing really loud. I'll cry a lot, you know, and that's the stuff that kind of helps me process. And I think finding hope is the other thing. And we've already been on for almost an hour, so I probably need to wrap it up.
Yeah.
What I've been finding at the end of every episode, I try to ask people where they find their hope and what it means to them. But before you answer that, please tell people where you can be followed on social media. So if they want to follow you as a journalist that is a seeker of truth and not a, you know, purveyor of false stories, please let them know where they can follow you.
Okay, so here on Instagram, it's just CBS LA, because I work for CBS Los Angeles. CBSLA Christine, but with a K. So CBSLA Kristine, and they can probably see it, I think,
Yes.
by watching this. And then if you go on Facebook, it's just Christine Lazar. And that's you have to like it. It's not like a friend request. It's a professional page.
Yes.
And I think you can speak to this. On my Instagram, it's all photos, right? And it's mostly my kids and my workspace, which I've shared a few photos behind the scenes recently of what my workspace looks like in my living room.
Yes.
And I think people have really enjoyed that. So that's some fun stuff. And then on my Facebook page, I obviously share the stories that I do, but I also share lots of parenting articles because that's where my headspace is. Today, I shared a really great NPR article that examines 14 different activities that we can start to do as we open up and what the risk is. So
I saw that.
Low risk, medium risk, and high risk. And I really enjoyed that because I actually have my father's immune compromised. He only has one good lung. He actually had lung cancer, not a smoker.
Yes.
But he had lung cancer and had a lobectomy, I think it's called. Yeah. Yeah, we've talked about that in 2014. So it really has to be careful. And Griffin turns 10 on July 18th. And we had planned for a big party, which now is not going to happen. But my hope is that my dad can come up and just be with us and we can have like a barbecue with our family and hopefully our cousins, my brother's kids, who we've also not seen. And so looking at that risk category was really helpful for me because I thought as we start to do stuff, I want to do low risk activities so that I'm not endangering my father if he comes to town. And it's not a judgmental piece. It's not, I hope people don't see it as a controversial piece. It's just a really great way to look and say, okay, like for instance, I didn't realize swimming in a community pool is low risk. So if you have a community pool that's opening back up, you should be able to feel, as long as you're not immune compromised or don't have any things, to go in it. So that's the kind of stuff I share. Mostly positive, really not, I don't get into politics. I don't get into anything that's super controversial.
I'm very thankful for that. Yes. I love that. So CBSLA Christine on Instagram and Christine are on Facebook.
And I'm on Twitter, but I rarely ever tweet. It's not my bag.
I know, same. All right. So Christine Lazar, as we wrap up, where do you find hope and what does hope mean to you?
You know, I would say that my hope is mostly rooted in my 3 children, in watching them grow. And I'm watching them right now. They're either fighting or playing in the jacuzzi. I'm not sure. But I don't hear any crying, so I'm going to let it be. I've always wanted to be a mom. It was something I wanted from a very early age. I wanted a career, but I also wanted to be a mom. And I derive so much joy and hope from them because seeing the world through their eyes where they don't have a lot of negative feelings yet, where they really see the sunny side of things. I took my 6-year-old twins to Disneyland for the first time ever in January. I'm so glad we went because who knows when that'll open back up. And just seeing that joy in big things like Disneyland or just everyday life. We baked some banana bread before we did this. That gives me hope. And that's where they're my biggest source of stress, but they're also my biggest sense of joy. I say to people, the best part about quarantine is seeing my kids a lot. The worst part of quarantine is seeing my kids.
Seeing your kids a lot. I love that. Oh, that's the perfect way to end this. Oh, well, Christine, thank you so much for doing this. And it's been so nice to see you. I don't think I've connected with you since quarantine. We got to do.
I know. It's wonderful. I love you. You know, I love you. And this is a testament. We met through I think someone asked, how do we know one another? We met because I did a story on Hazel in 2013. And I came up to your hospital room and she was a cranky pants that day. So I did see the cranky part of Hazel.
Yeah, she was.
And, which I understand. I mean, she's experienced so much pain and anxiety that, we've not been through. But anyway, I love connecting to people who I meet on a story who become friends and who become so dear to me. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I love you too. And I hope that this can at least help some other people in time and watch this and feel these other moms are doing it too,
Yeah, we're in it together. Again, we're not in the same boat, but we're all in the same storm.
I love that. All right. We're all in the boat. We're not in the same boat, but we're all in the same. I like that. All right.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. And Christine, we will see you soon.
Okay. Bye, Lauren.
All right. Bye.